In the prelude to the grand finale of Tour de Endurance, we turn our sights to the second part of the B League. 3 events to conclude the lower league of the teams that didn't qualify, and it's the Cheeseballs in the lead.
Moneymakers in second, but we look down to the relegated zone and you see Team Sunrise, Cosmonauts, Popsicles, and the Croissant Crew. Those four need to really kick it up in these final 3 events. You got Jousting, Triathlon, and the Team Final Descent on the docket today. We'll see how it goes. We got one pre-show for the Jousting, but we only just saw this event, so we should all know how it works by now. This is just for a bit of fun.
Yeah, so actually, since there are 12 teams in this event, we'll have 6 advancers to the quarterfinals, and then out of the 3 non-advancers to the semifinals, they will play against each other to determine who's the 4th team to go to the semifinals. So you can see the Royal Blues getting the win just barely ahead of the Ash Risers, but now we're going to get into the actual event. Honeycombs and Team Sunrise in the first heat.
It's all about how quickly you get down to Honeycombs, take the first 2 strikes, and immediately they've got a good lead over Team Sunrise here, and they've got all their marbles against the blocks. Team Sunrise will need a miracle to push beyond, and they will not. The Honeycombs will move on to the first round and I'd say a pretty clean win. Team Sunrise did have a chance, but they just could not find the opportunity to push the Honeycombs away from the other end of the block, and then, I'd say, invade their half.
Yeah, the Honeycombs actually didn't have a great third push, so I think Team Sunrise did give it their best effort at the end, but it was too little, too late. Now we move on to the Popsicles and the Onion Union in the second heat. Onion Union is up there in the standings. Popsicles, the opposite, in the relegation zone. It is very close out of the first 2 marbles. Onion Union now pushing it further. Popsicles, I don't think Popsicles will be enough. It won't be, and Onion Union will be beating them in this heat.
That was actually a very close round. I mean, we saw some great comebacks in the A-League, but so far through the Expedition Pre-Show in the first 2 heats, it's been a slow burn, with the winner being pretty clear, but not necessarily by a massive drastic story. And the Onion Union 0.31, they're on to the next round as we move to the Cosmonauts and the Cheeseballs. One team is in great fortune here, the other one is in very poor fortune and needs to pick it up quickly.
And both of these teams were relegated last time around. Cheeseballs doing much better this time. Cosmonauts, though, will comfortably beat them here, pretty much from start to finish, and they needed that. Cosmonauts, you can see they got out in front early on. Cheeseballs try to push it back, but it's not going to work. Cosmonauts early on for pretty much all of their marbles earlier than the Cheeseballs, and that worked to their favor for a .48 win against the Cheeseballs.
At least one team from the relegation zone is going to move on to the quarterfinals here, so that's something to look forward to. The Silly Slimes and the Sweet and Sours next to run. Silly Slimes have strength in their history, and they already have striked well ahead of the Sweet and Sours here in a swarm attack that we only saw once in the A-League from the Blue Brigade, and it works here. The Sweet and Sours actually try and come back and get some good distance back on the Silly Slimes, but by that point they had already been pushed well too far into their own half, and the Silly Slimes will easily advance here.
Yeah, once the block is that far, I think no matter what the last marble do, they're not going to be able to recover. Silly Slimes, we saw them do well in block bumping before. They're doing well here in jousting. Now, Moneymakers and Steel Force. Moneymakers have been very good in the first part with 3-on-3 medals. Will they beat the Steel Force here? It's looking like it. Yes, they will. Comfortably ahead of the Steel Force.
Biggest win we've seen so far from the Moneymakers, who are probably been the most consistent. They've gotten a bronze and 2 silvers in the opening of in the first half of the B League, and they're continuing that with a well over 1 difference over the Steel Force, who they're close to that relegation zone, but with teams like the Silly Slimes and Team Sunrise and others, they might start to slip in. But Croissant Crew and Crystal Pistols, the final heat. Croissant Crew are down there. Crystal Pistols just got a bronze. That's a good second strike. What can they do in the ending here?
Oh, Crystal Pistols, they tried to bring it back after the Croissant Crew had a great opening push, but they just could not. Croissant Crew had a good opening push and had good power behind them to support them, so the Croissant Crew sitting down in dead last in the standings. They need this win here, and they're going to be happy with it to move on. Crystal Pistols mid-pack in the standings, so they're not in complete danger, but they'll get 9th in this event. Steel Force dead last, Team Sunrise best of the rest, but they're hoping that they could have advanced in this event.
Now we move on to the quarterfinals. The winners of these rounds are locked into the semi-final spots, but then all the losers still have a chance. They'll go to their own little group stage to determine who will be the wild card in the semi-finals. So Honeycombs and Onion Union, and it's a better opening strike for the Honeycombs, but Onion Union still aren't out of this race. They'll need some monumental attacks, and the Honeycombs are pushing back with counterattacks for every Onion Union marble, and that's going to be another advancement for the Honeycombs, who seem to be back toward their Season 1 form after a really rough Season 2.
The Honeycombs have been consistent in this B-League, and they continue it in this event. They are moving on to the semi-finals and a chance at a medal. But remember, Onion Union, even if you lose in this match in the quarterfinals, you still have a chance at the overall gold. It's just a way harder path because you have to go through more rounds. Now, Silly Slimes and the Cosmonauts. Silly Slimes from the near side, Cosmonauts from the far side. Cosmonauts had the better start, but Silly Slimes have brought it back.
So Cosmonauts brought it back again. That was a back and forth battle all the way to the end, and it's just going to squeak towards the Cosmonauts' favour. Cosmonauts had the opening strike, then the Silly Slimes came down and absolutely thrashed it into the Cosmonauts side, but then that bump there, the Silly Slimes are pushed away from the block, and that gives the Cosmonauts a free knock into their range, and the Silly Slimes almost brought it back over the line, but it's just a 0.03 difference for the Cosmonauts, and they are on to semi-finals.
That last marble making all the difference for the Cosmonauts as we move on to the Moneymakers and the Croissant Crew. The block is lifted out of the lane. Will they push it back in? Yes, they will. And Moneymakers look like they have it pretty comfortably. The Croissant Crew did try to push it back, but it was too far into their zone. So the Moneymakers will get a win, although it was not as decisive as I thought it would be.
Yeah, Croissant Crew there, that third strike, that fourth one, if that fourth one came down a little bit sooner, they could have knocked the block into the Moneymakers side and just squeaked by, but they were a little bit too slow and indecisive into making their move, and the Moneymakers have locked in their spot. But now we take a quick, before we go to semi-finals, we've got to see who the wild card's going to be. So all three of these teams will play each other once, and whoever has the lowest difference will move on to the semi-finals with the other three.
Onion Union gets out to a good lead. Silly Slimes now trying to come back. It's very dead even. Onion Union slightly have it with Doom. They have two marbles. Silly Slimes, great final push, and the Onion Union have nothing to show for it. It was all Onion Union earlier in this match, but the Silly Slimes with the anchor did exactly what they needed to do to push the block into the other zone.
That could be critical. Winning both of your matches pretty much confirms you moving on to semi-finals. So Silly Slimes already have one of theirs on the board, and Onion Union look to be in trouble. So what Silly Slimes with that fantastic anchor, if they can beat the Croissant Crew here, I don't think there's any hope in the Silly Slimes not moving on. So this is a very important match for the Silly Slimes, and Croissant Crew have a chance. So they've got the early push, and they're striking back all the Silly Slimes marbles with one of their own, and Croissant Crew have won pretty easily here.
Yeah, there was no chance that last Silly Slime marble would be able to do anything. So the Croissant Crew have got an advantage over Silly Slimes, who did win. So if the Croissant Crew beat the Onion Union, it's almost guaranteed the Croissant Crew will be moving on. But if the Onion Union beat the Croissant Crew, it'll be interesting to see. 0.59 was the victory for the Croissant Crew.
If Onion Union win here, it's going to go down to the difference. And it was a pretty sizable win for the Silly Slimes, and it was a sizable win there again for the Croissant Crew, about the same at the 0.5 range. Onion Union already have the lead, and it's only getting bigger. This could be really important, but the Croissant Crew are fighting back just a little bit, and Lord knows who's moved on. It's going to be very close. It's all come down to the difference, because they've all won one of their matches. So we'll have to see who's moving on based off of difference. I could not tell you off the top of my head.
I think it might be the Croissant Crew. Actually, no, Onion Union had the biggest difference in this round, I'm pretty sure, ahead of their opponent. So who will it be? It will be the Onion Union. That last push was good enough to put them into the semi-finals. Croissant Crew and Silly Slimes are knocked out. They'll get 5th and 6th in that order.
Onion Union are thrown right back into it after that gassed effort to face the Honeycombs in the semi-finals, and already they're losing out. Honeycombs have the early lead, and here comes the second one, who to immediately counter-attack the Onion Union, who had their second and third coming down. The Honeycombs easily move on there, showing that they probably, as the wild card, Onion Union didn't really stand much of a chance there, as Honeycombs moved on much more convincingly.
Yeah, Honeycombs, I think the Onion Union must have been gassed after so many matches. They just could not beat the Honeycombs, who were in very good shape earlier on in this event. Now, Cosmonauts and the Moneymakers, if they advance here, they'll guarantee another medal. 4 for 4 will it be, but they're being beaten by the Cosmonauts. 3 marbles. Cosmonauts, though their last marble couldn't do much, but it's not going to matter. Moneymakers will be knocked out by the Cosmonauts. That's a bit of a surprise, if I have to say.
Cosmonauts, they're coming back into this. There's going to be another medal for them. They got one back in the Duo Funnel Duel, and then bottom two results in the other events. So Cosmonauts really need this in the relegation zone. This is very important for them. Moneymakers, though, can still go for their elusive 4 for 4 in the bronze medal match, but Onion Union are going to try and stop them, which is what we're going to look at first before we look to the gold medal match. Onion Union versus Moneymakers.
Will the wild card get a bronze here, or will Moneymakers go 4 for 4? Onion Union, it's all them after 2 marbles. Moneymakers trying to bring it back. Onion Union couldn't do much, but the Moneymakers, their final marble. The Onion Union were just too solidly against the block, and they will capture the bronze.
That's how you do it right there. Onion Union had pretty much their whole wall of 3 marbles ahead of the block. For the last Moneymaker could not do anything about it. A wall of defense, and there was no chance Moneymakers could have brought that one back. And a 0.58 difference. Onion Union, that's another medal. 2 out of 4, that's not bad at all. Onion Union will get the bronze in this event, but now we look to the final. Cosmonauts, who really need it to get out of the relegation zone, and the Honeycombs, who are looking to try and perhaps get a B-League top 3 back to get back to their Season 1 form.
Yeah, these two teams were both in Season 1, both now in the B-League. Ooh, that was very good from the Cosmonauts, but it goes back to the Honeycombs. Honeycombs will get the win just barely, but that was very back and forth. You can see Honeycombs getting it here, then the Cosmonauts, a great third push, and the Honeycombs respond beautifully to put them in the gold.
Now that was the battle you like to see for the final. The Cosmonauts brought it back immediately after what looked like an early lead for the Honeycombs, and it looked like what could have been a surefire victory for the Cosmonauts just slips out of their hands with great strategy from the Honeycombs, and that is going to be a gold for the Honeycombs, a silver for the Cosmonauts. I'm sure they're happy with that anyway, and the Onion Union pick up the bronze. You start for the next one. Triathlon.
Okay. So now we're moving on to the triathlon. We're going in the reverse for the previous 3 A-League events. So jousting, triathlon, and team funnel descent. This is the 5th event of the B-League, so teams down in the order need to make their move now. Remember, if you remember from the A-League triathlon, this can cause changes all throughout, from the gravel tracks, the track, and the water. We have 6 marbles in each of the heats here.
The top 3 move on to the final, and then it's another final of 6. So this is an absolute madhouse compared to the A-League, but it's currently Steel Force and in front, who just missed out to Onion Union entering the track section, and Silly Slimes right behind them as well. They have a go at Steel Force, but they just cannot get around. There's a massive block, which could be dividends for Silly Slimes. They're slow in the water, and the Moneymakers squeezed by. That was quite the water comeback by the Moneymakers, who, look, at this point, they're pretty much in last.
The Silly Slime just completely fell apart in the water. They were contending. I thought it was going to be easy advancement for the Steel Force, Onion Union, and the Silly Slimes. These 3 well out in front in the track section. Then just looked at the water. That bump didn't do too much detriment to the Silly Slime. That bump did, and the Silly Slime just completely out of sorts, and they just go drifting off to completely the wrong direction. Moneymakers capitalized, and they will get advancement.
Perhaps some blocking by Onion Union there threw off the Silly Slime's water line, and they had to quickly divert, but because of the water's pressure, they were thrown too far off, and they missed it completely as a result. Sweet and Sour is through to the Cheese Balls in this next round. Everybody else, and it's currently a big lead for the Cheese Balls, but Cosmonauts, hot off that silver medal, they're going for a gold. Look at that push into first place. The Cheese Balls trying to catch up, but it's these 3 well out in front, as Crystal Pistols are well ahead of the rest. Goodness me, that was an absolute blowout for Cheese Balls, Cosmonauts, and Crystal Pistols.
Yeah, it was a 2-marble race into the track section, and then Crystal Pistols joined them, so those 3 comfortably moving on. No upsets here, as the other 3 teams had nothing to show for it. Croissant Crew, Popsicles, and the Sweet and Sours are going to be knocked out. But that was a great move by the Cosmonauts to take the lead going to the track section. You can see the Cheese Balls coming at them back in the water. Not that it mattered anyway, but I guess it's a bit of bragging rights as they get into the final. Crystal Pistols, also a good event for them, trying to ensure that they won't be relegated with 1 event to go after this one.
All those 3 advancing teams were relegated back in Season 2, and as based on what they've done so far, they're doing their very best to avoid that from happening again. Honeycombs, hot off that gold medal. That is not what you want to be doing in dead last in that event. Team Sunrise, they're low down there. That would be quite the shocker if Team Sunrise were to get relegated, because they're looking close to it. But we look to the final now. Moneymakers through to the Cheese Balls. 1 straight blast for the goal. Who's going to get it? Currently, Moneymakers lead the way, but everyone's swarming them, and now it's Crystal Pistols in first place.
Moneymakers make a move on the Cosmonauts for a second. Now Moneymakers try and go around the outside, inside. Crystal Pistols block them. Crystal Pistols will they be caught? No, they will not. And the Crystal Pistols will capture the goal in the triathlon, but it was not without the lack of trying of the Moneymakers, who will capture the silver. That's their 4th medal of this B-League.
Fantastic by the Moneymakers. They're keeping themselves out for sure with results like that. But Crystal, look at that play. Moneymakers straight around. Steel Force, in fact, lost several spots there and fell all the way back to 5th. There was the attempt to make the move by the Moneymakers, but they just couldn't hack it. Now, who got 3rd place? If you look in the water here, it was an absolute swarm for 3rd, and it was Onion Union with their 2nd bronze in a row. They're on fire in this B-League, but well done to the Crystal Pistols and the Moneymakers and the Onion Union for well-fought medals.
And now as we look at the standings, well, we're going to look at the results again. Cheese Balls also fell from 3rd to 5th in that final. Cosmonauts 6th. We're going to take a look at the standings. Very important going to the final event after this podium ceremony.
Of course, those that are in the relegation zone need to do all that they can to stay out of it. Let's see what the points take up to. It is Popsicles, Team Sunrise, Croissant Crew, and Sweet and Sours. 19 to 15, a full 4 points. 4 points is big in this instance between Steel Force in 8th and Popsicles in 9th. So those teams need to put everything they can into this team final descent, which we just saw in the A-League, and it was an absolute blockbuster there, and it's going to be even more so here, considering the stakes some of these teams have to avoid.
Moneymakers, Onion Union, Cheese Balls, Honeycombs, and the Crystal Pistols are all safe from relegation. Also, all of those except for the Crystal Pistols can still win the B-League, so a lot on offer in this final event. The Team Funnel Descent, it's the Popsicles that have top 2 right now. They're looking pretty good. Team Sunrise also had one dropped on in the other funnel. We have Steel Force, 3 in the orange. They are down there in the standings. They need a good result, or at least a decent result, to be safe from relegation. Popsicles have top 3 right now in the yellow funnel.
Popsicles, of course. Popsicles and Team Sunrise need this the most. They are currently in the relegation zone with Steel Force right on that bubble, and currently it looks like they're going to fall in. They've got 3 of their marbles, now 4 already across that bridge. Honeycombs are the only team in this group that have already confirmed themselves safe from relegation, and they can still win this B-League if they win this event and if Moneymakers finish dead last. But considering Moneymakers' form, that seems unlikely to happen. But Popsicles, they have one up there with several others down. As you start to see those marbles, several of them fall into the green. 4 of which are Steel Force.
Team Sunrise have 2 also circling up there. Popsicles still have 2 that haven't gone into the green funnel. Steel Force looking in a dangerous position, but only have 1 entrant in the lower green funnel. Honeycombs also have 1, but have a 1 all the way up in the orange. All of the teams except for the Team Sunrise have 1 up there, and now Popsicles. Now everyone's in the green funnels.
But look at that, there are still 3 Team Sunrise, now 2, but still, that's a good number. 2 Team Sunrise up there with the Popsicles and the Honeycombs. 1 Popsicle has already come across the line to finish the race, that'll be 1 point for them. But there's others starting to slip through now as Team Sunrise look to be in the better situation here. They've got 2 still going wide and 1 pushing everyone else in. That's 3 in the top 5 for Team Sunrise. They should lock themselves down to advance here. But look at the wildcard spots. Popsicles looked pretty consistent beyond their last place finisher. Where will these Team Sunrise marbles finish to lock in? Finishing, it's 5th, 4th, and it looks like, no, it's going to be higher.
Team Sunrise, will they hold on for the individual win? I think they will guarantee that they will get the win and advance. Oh, Honeycombs! Did that marble follow? I think that will be classified as a DNF for them.
It will not. That came out. He comes through the last funnel. That will count as just 3rd place. If they did that on the other green funnel, it would have easily been considered a DNF. But that Honeycomb, wiping sweat off his rally, didn't do that earlier, because otherwise that would have been disastrous for the Honeycombs. They've already confirmed themselves safe, but they can't be making those drastic mistakes anyway, because you never know what could happen with that championship. Team Sunrise 1, 4, 5, the other one down in 12th, but that 12th one does not really matter. But look at Steel Force, 16th, 14th, 13th. I missed that in the original race.
Steel Force, ooh, I don't think this will be very good for them in terms of their relegation hopes, hoping of missing relegation. Team Sunrise, by the way, need this result. In the B-League, you need to get a win unless you get the wildcard spot to go to the final. So they'll be very happy to advance because they're down in the relegation zone. Honeycombs, of course, they're already safe. They'd be liking to get that wildcard spot and go to the final.
The wildcard spot's going to come down to consistency. The Honeycombs had the higher finishes consistently, but Popsicles had a couple of big ones. There you see 6th place and I think 2nd place, and it's the Honeycombs who get the spot. And Popsicles being in the relegation zone with the confirmed elimination in this event, they will be relegated. Heartbreak for the Popsicles, but that is just how the marble rolls, unfortunately. The Cosmonauts, Cheese Balls, Sweet and Sours, and Silly Slimes are going to follow that up in Heat 2.
We have multiple teams here that did get relegated last season. They're hoping to avoid it this time. Cosmonauts and the Cheese Balls. Sweet and Sours also have 2 up there. They have a 1-2 going out right now. Silly Slimes also have no one down in the orange funnel. Now they have 1, and they're also looking pretty good.
It's early days though, Sweet and Sours. You saw that the top 2 from the Popsicles, top 3 in fact from the Popsicles at this point in the race ended in a 3rd place finish overall when all the standings came back. So this opening does not mean much if you don't know how to roll with it. And currently the Cheese Balls have 2 well down there, while Sweet and Sours are still holding their own to a good degree, but the Cheese Balls are really struggling. Cosmonauts are widespread down toward the bottom, and Silly Slimes and Sweet and Sours seem to have this race in their stride, particularly the Sweet and Sours. They're on fire in this race so far, as Cheese Balls and Cosmonauts now have 2, and Cheese Balls look to have 2 very soon, once that other one falls on through, but he avoids it. Currently it's 2 Cheese Balls and 3 Cosmonauts are in the green funnel already.
Yeah, I think the experience showing from last season, only the teams in the A-League did it last season, and that's really showing with the Sweet and Sour is doing well here. Silly Slimes also fairly up there. Cheese Balls, though, they only have one in the bottom funnel. Cosmonauts have two circling down there. I think Cosmonauts are going to be done here. Cheese Balls, Silly Slimes, a pair of them now in the last green funnel. Silly Slimes and Cheese Balls still have one in the orange. Cheese Balls now the only one in the orange.
There's still two Sweet and Sours up top in the top green funnel, but it's getting pushed around like mad, and now it's just 1-1 Cheese Ball. Two Cosmonauts have already finished, followed by a Silly Slime. Now it's just a complete mush pit in the meanwhile. But up top, you've got one Sweet and Sour and one Cheese Ball pacing the field up here as the Cheese Ball comes across, but it's a complete mess of marbles as we come across the line here. Who is going to advance? It's actually very close. This will be between Cheese Balls, I reckon, and the Sweet and Sours. Depending on where this last Sweet and Sour finishes, it could make all the difference.
The Cheese Balls have had a good comeback, but the Sweet and Sours have looked good throughout. And if they get the win here, I think this might seal the deal for them. The Cheese Balls, don't count them out. They've been on form in this B-League. Who will get this win?
Oh, it's going to go down to the wire. The Cheese Balls finesse around it, but it is not enough to knock the Sweet and Sours off their game. And the Sweet and Sours just get the win. But I only saw 3 Sweet and Sour marbles in the catch basin and none nearby, which makes me think one of them, without our knowledge, has crashed. And that is not what the Sweet and Sours, who are in the relegation zone and looked so good in the meanwhile, did not need to do. So Sweet and Sours, that could be just disaster. And Cheese Balls, who have already confirmed to avoid relegation, are just going for the B-League Championship at this point, may have just snuck through off of that DNF, if there was one, and there was. Deary me.
Oh, the Cheese Balls, I feel like you can see all of them just under a Sweet and Sour, but with that one Sweet and Sour getting dead last, I think the Cheese Balls might be sneaking in here. You can see, here's where the Sweet and Sour just fell off and just did not get a good exit whatsoever, and that's going to be heartbreak for them.
We saw that with the Hell Clowns twice over in the A-League in one race, and it did not pan out too well for them. They finished that event in 15th. It was tragic, and there you see that DNF cost the Sweet and Sour's advancement, and possibly even, unless if they can keep that wildcard spot, that may have just costed the Sweet and Sours a chance at Season 4's qualifiers. They might be relegated off of that. We'll have to see what the wildcard does here with Crystal Pistols, Moneymakers, Onion Union, and the Croissant Crew. With one more team, the Croissant Crew, the only team still in that relegation zone who we're yet to see fully race.
So 37 is the important number that the Sweet and Sour set, that if the second place here beats, the Sweet and Sours will be knocked out. We'll see who gets the win and gets straight blast into the final. With Onion Union, pretty much all of them have one in the yellow funnel. Croissant Crew also looking pretty good. Moneymakers have one up there too. Moneymakers also have 2 in the top orange funnel. They're looking very good in this event.
Moneymakers have looked good the entire B-League, quite frankly, and if they're leading the championship currently by 9 points over the Cheese Balls, who did just advance. So if Moneymakers don't advance, they could lose that to the Cheese Balls in the final. But the B-League championship is something else to look out for, is the relegation. Most are looking out for that. The Croissant Crew currently have several in the orange. They've already got 2 in the first green funnel, but they have the other 2 up there pretty high. So they've got 2 making damage down low and 2 doing damage up high. That can work, but you need to have one of those low down ones start to catch up, and in short order too.
Onion Union also have almost 3 down into the lower green funnel. They have 2 joined by one of those Crystal Pistols, but it is the Moneymakers that have multiple, no, just 1 in the orange funnel now. They have none in the orange funnel. Onion Union and the Croissant Crew beat them to the green funnels, but it is very close across the board. I have no idea who's going to get this, apart from, I think, the Moneymakers. They have 3 in the top green funnel.
As I start to power in, all of the Crystal Pistols are really close to the event horizon, and they're pretty much all done as I finish speaking. Onion Union have 3 finished, Croissant Crew have 2. Moneymakers only have 1 coming across the line. There are still 3 Moneymakers rolling compared to 2 Croissant Crew and 1 Onion Union. These 2 Croissant Crew could make all the difference in the relegation battle. Let's see what they can do. If they can get top results, it's going to be really important. Moneymakers lose 1 of theirs, followed by a second, but then both the Croissant Crew and the Onion Union have a win, but their other 3 inconsistent and poor finishing marbles means they're not going to advance. I think Moneymakers will, but Croissant Crew, what will their score be for that wildcard position if they're going to get it?
Yeah, I think it's certain that the Moneymakers are going to the final based on the win in this heat, but Croissant Crew, Moneymakers did not hold on for the best, like, first or second, so I think Croissant Crew might be able to sneak in based on the wildcard. We'll have to see. Remember, it's 37 they're chasing. Moneymakers did get 2nd, 5th, and 6th, although one all the way down in 13th. Croissant Crew went down in 14th, but they had a 3rd and 4th, so it's going to be very close on the math.
Yeah, we'll have to see what the actual Matthew will have to say behind this one, because I can't tell based off of that. I think Moneymakers are going to win. Oh dear, the Crystal Pistols had a DNF as well, so we've seen 1 per the last couple of races, but Crystal Pistols have already locked in themselves safe to advance to the Season 4 qualifiers, so they won't be upset too much about that one besides a couple of missed points potentially, but Moneymakers, look at that, at that point in the race, it's going to be 42-39. The Moneymakers do win, but the Croissant Crew beat the score by I think just 1 point. Is that good enough for wild card? Yes it is! The Croissant Crew are the wild card, along with Team Sunrise. 2 of those teams in the relegation zone are in this final.
And actually the Sweet and Sours don't even get 5th. They get beat out by the Honeycombs, who got 5th ahead of them. It's not looking very good for them, but now we're ready for the final. Team Sunrise, Croissant Crew, Moneymakers, and the Cheese Balls. We have multiple contenders for the overall win here, although Moneymakers look like primed to take the overall win.
The overall win is pretty much locked in because if Moneymakers finish in 4th, they'll get 8 points. If Cheese Balls finish in 1st, they'll get 15, and that's 2 less than what the Cheese Balls need to beat them. So Moneymakers have locked away the B-League Championship, but all eyes are on Team Sunrise and the Croissant Crew. Whoever does better here is pretty much going to confirm themselves into Season 4 qualifiers while condemning the other one to relegation. And between Team Sunrise and Croissant Crew, one of those teams has a much more rich championship history in Tour de Endurance, so it'd be quite the shock to see Team Sunrise get relegated.
The Cheese Balls looking pretty good up there with 1 marble, having the individual lead. Moneymakers and Team Sunrise also have ones up there, but down towards the bottom is Team Sunrise and the Croissant Crew. Croissant Crew not looking good in this event. They have multiple down in the green funnel.
That is not good for the Crusade. 3 of the 4 first entrants into the green funnel were all Croissant Crew competitors. One of them is trying his best up in the last orange funnel, but he slips on through as I say that. There are 3 Cheese Balls compared to and 2 Team Sunrise. A lot of yellow up in the top orange funnel still as we start to see Moneymakers and Croissant Crew particularly plummet into the second green funnel.
Moneymakers have multiple. Croissant Crew also have 3 down in the second green funnel. All 4 of them, it's all slipping away from the Croissant Crew. Team Sunrise, if they can just beat them, I think Team Sunrise might be safe from relegation. Cheese Balls also have multiple up there. Team Sunrise have 2, now just 1, but Team Sunrise still in a much better position than Croissant Crew, their relegation rivals. Moneymakers will finish first, then it's Cheese Balls, Moneymakers again, but Croissant Crew doing a pretty good job of circling and holding on.
Suddenly, the Croissant Crew comeback seems to be on. They've already beaten 2 of Team Sunrise. There's still 3 on just compared to 1. But Team Sunrise, it's going to be close. Team Sunrise individually beats out all of the Croissant Crew. But if you were paying attention, you would see the Croissant Crew seem to beat a good chunk of the Team Sunrise members there in a shocking last-ditch effort. There was so much yellow in the top green funnel. There was all Cheese Balls and all Team Sunrise. Pretty much all 4 of each were beating out the Moneymakers and the Croissant Crew. So this would be a critical comeback for the Croissant Crew. But I think both those teams will finish on the podium and Moneymakers look like they're going to miss it. But Cheese Balls, I actually don't know who's won this event, quite frankly, but it looks like it could be the Cheese Balls from what I saw in that final green funnel.
I think it might be safe to say Cheese Balls have probably guaranteed 2nd place in the B-League if they are contending for the win in this event, but it is going to be Cheese Balls 1st, 4th, and 5th. I think they've won this event, but based on the consistency, I think Croissant Crew might have beat Team Sunrise.
Team Sunrise had 3 down there in the bottom half of the order that was all just 3 in a row of mid spots. Considering, look at this, look at all of the yellow in the top green funnel there. It is 4 Cheese Balls and 3 Team Sunrise. I don't know how Team Sunrise have thrown this away, but they have definitely not beaten Croissant Crew, as Croissant Crew had higher consistency, just holding their own in that bottom green funnel. The overall scores are probably going to become Cheese Balls winning, and Croissant Crew should be in 2nd. We'll have to see, but I'm pretty confident in that call.
How Croissant Crew managed to bring that back for 2nd place is unbelievable, but they have by 9 points over Team Sunrise. Moneymakers will get 4, but they are happy with the overall win, but it will be Cheese Balls winning this event. That's their 3rd win of the season.
The real question is, between Croissant Crew and Team Sunrise, will only one survive, being the Croissant Crew, or will both survive the relegation zone? Cheese Balls, of course, they celebrate their medal now, but will the celebrations be short-lived for these 2 teams? They were in danger coming into it, and Croissant Crew have escaped, and Team Sunrise have not!
Oh, Team Sunrise, absolute heartbreak for them. They all fell away in that final, but they will be going no further.
Steel Force, Popsicles, and Sweet and Sours will be joining Team Sunrise in the season on the bench for Season 4 qualifiers, and we'll be back for Season 4 B-League, but that is just tragic. But well done, the Moneymakers, Cheese Balls, and the Onion Union for getting top 3 in this B-League.